Welcome to our Friday edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. This is our open Q&A session where our goal is to be a live forum for military veterans, military spouses, and allies, which basically means that pretty much everybody is welcome to join us. And our goal is to help you with Salesforce technology related issues, whether it's a trailhead badge that you're stuck on or an issue or a challenge that you're facing at work. Pretty much anything Salesforce technology related, that's what we focus on. The only thing that we ask is that we don't ask specific questions around Salesforce super badges or answers to specific questions on certification, just because that's a violation of the Salesforce's policy. All right. Now, if you want to stay connected after the call, a couple ways you can do that. Definitely sign up at mtofficehours.com so you can receive notifications of all of our different sessions that we have. Follow us on LinkedIn. Both we have a page as well as a group that you can follow there. And we also have a private Slack workspace that you can join. And if you need any of these links sent to you, just hit me up in the chat and we can do so. All right. So with that, let me stop sharing. Hopefully you guys were seeing my presentation as I did that. And all right, good. All right, cool. So yeah, Megan, I want to clarify one thing before we jump into Julia's question. You said reports will have conditional formatting, which I thought we already had that.
Well, you have to build the formulas for it. There are ways to do it, but they're not user friendly. So if you don't have like a dedicated admin and you do stuff like we support a lot of customers. So we have a lot of things that come through like, you know, good idea fairy and things like that that you want to just smash. This is just going to be a much easier way to do it to set your conditioning rules. So I don't know here. I'm going to throw it. I'm going to throw it here. And the reason why this came up is because we have a customer that's currently used to using Excel and having that conditional formatting available in all of their things, which Salesforce doesn't really offer in its reports. So one of our consultants found this the other day.
Gotcha. Let me I'm gonna pull that up real
So
quick.
there it is. Only available on dynamic form fields.
Oh, conditional field formatting.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that better.
I thought you were talking about in reporting. Okay.
Well, she seems to think that it's going to transfer over because we're using dynamic forms and dynamic. So I haven't got to touch it yet, so I don't know.
Huh. Okay.
So
Customer sentiment. Cool. Yeah, definitely take a look at this. Yeah, because I thought you were referring to the conditional formatting that we're, familiar with, like on the reports where you can change it to like red and green and stuff like that. And I was hopeful that at a minimum they would support decimal places on that. That doesn't seem to be what this is.
not for you.
Yeah. So all right, cool. Let's jump in then. Julia, you've been waiting patiently. Do you have a question you wanted to go through?
Do you recall the last time I wanted to do round robin?
Yes.
Okay, so continue on with that. I built it out like you did. Um, because we have a master detail relationship between like the project and I think something else, I can't remember, some other custom object, we can't do queues. So I'm wondering if we can create a public group and then I access the public group. I think the question I have is, do I need to get the group name and then get the members in the group and then do the same thing essentially is what you did, is find the anyone that has the last date, etc. So I'm also using the user object still
Yeah.
and using that last date or whatever. And then do I need to loop through those members? So that's the question. If I can use public groups and can I access
Yes.
public groups?
Yeah. So just to say that back to you and kind of catch everybody else up if they weren't on that call when we discussed that. So essentially, we wanted a mechanism that um, we can have a queue that would contain a set of different users. And whenever a record, just to simplify things, whenever a record's created, we wanted to go to that queue, find the person that was they haven't received one of these records the most recently, or they're the oldest one, they haven't got one in a long time, and assign that record to them. And then when we did that, we updated a timestamp to say, okay, they received one today. So the next time a record is created, we go to that queue, get all the users, find the one that's the oldest now, assign the record to them, update their timestamp, and it keeps going like that. So basically, it would be kind of like a round robin that everybody essentially gets the same number of records assigned to them. So that's what we did. So yeah, I think the short answer to your question, and we can open it up for comments, is that essentially it's the same exact steps, right? The way that we had done it previously, we got the queue, and then we got all the users that were in the queue, we would just need to modify that so that we get the public group and then get all the users that are part of the public group. It's essentially the exact same thing.
And I don't need to do a loop, right? Because I just find the member with the last date or whatever. And if they start out with nothing, it'll just find the first person inside that group.
Yeah, because I think the way that we did, Ryan, do you have a point, Cut?
Just if you have subgroups in there, then you're going to need to loop through the subgroups to get the members of those.
I was thinking creating different public groups. And so they're going to go through a different branch, like a decision, and to do that. The only caveat I have is if there's one person in both groups, then that last date may impact. Then I have to create two different dates, I think.
Yeah, you would need two different timestamp fields. Yeah.
Timestamp fields, yes. Okay, sounds pretty simple. No loops involved, same thing. Just access first the group, then access the members in that group. And then can I define from the group member access also if they're active or not? Like reach out to the user object from there. Should be able to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're basically in the criteria, and I was trying to see if I could find the flow in which environment that it did that in. But essentially, when you're querying, once you get the group and you're going to get the group members, I think we had something in there where we were querying and we were sorting by the last, like the timestamp, ascending, whatever it is, where we're getting the oldest one. I think you just need to add additional criteria in there where it's basically that the user is active. So I think you can do that. I wish I had that. I don't know where I put it though. And if you've been joining these calls long enough, you know how to name things where I can actually find them later. So, but yeah, I don't see any issue why you shouldn't be able to do that with the group versus a queue.
Great, that sounds good. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Ryan, you look thoughtful. Did you have
I'm just not sure if we'll be able to check if they're active in that query or if we'd have to go act on it after. Yeah. So you may have to do a decision and then I don't know. I'm not 100% on that. I'd have to see it.
Like I know that one of our clients has something similar, and I think what they actually did was they used like a queue position. I lost my spot because I started talking. My hand raised. And it was something where basically they have like spots in the queue, and so whoever's number one, will be the one grabbed and assigned to whatever is coming in, and then everybody gets updated, moved up like to a different position, and then they will also account for anybody who's out of office if they use the out of office feature. But I didn't build it. We didn't build it. It was actually their internal admin that built it, and they always tend to do things really complicated. So I don't know if it's the simplest way. I just know that
I wanted to use the out of office too, but it doesn't seem like we can reach the timestamps.
It doesn't use timestamps. That was the difference, because they actually like have a field called queue position.
And maybe another field that says, I was just going to create, maybe if we do want to out of office, probably just an out of office checkbox on the user, and they go in manually and check it or not check it.
So I mean, other than that, like I said, I don't know the full details on it because I only kind of looked at it for a little bit and it was a while ago. But if what you're working on now doesn't work out, hit me up and I'll try to investigate and review it and see if I can help out with this idea, because it seems to work because I've had it in place for a while.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
And Julia, one last thought on this too. If I remember it again, I've come up short trying to find it. I wonder if I created it and then never saved it at the end of the call. But in any case, I think if I remember this correctly, and Ryan, let me know if this rings a bell, but I think we got the group. We queried the group member ID. So we got the group members. We looped through those and basically added the user IDs into a collection. And then we did the query on the user object where the user ID is in that list, order by the timestamp. And I'm thinking that query is the one that we would say order by the timestamp, but also have a criteria in there where active is equal to true. I think that would be the active criteria. But again, I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look at the recording.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. And I think we or filter on the users that we got, right? So if we filter on the users that we got, then yeah, you'll be able to check those things. I was just thinking, it's been a while, but it was like on the actual query to the users in the queue at that point, you can't identify that. But since we are getting the members, and if you wait till October 12th, you don't need to use a loop to get those IDs in a collection.
Okay, so for now you're saying get those IDs, put it into collection, then from that get the user, get those users from that collection, check which one's active, sort them or something, and then
the get would specifically say where the user ID is in that collection and is active is equal to true.
Gotcha.
And if you have a checkbox and the out of office is equal to false or something like that.
Right, right. Gotcha. Okay, great. That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, you just dropped a dropped something on us. Let's hear it. What is this now?
With the transform element, it's in the pre-release right now in pre-release orgs. With your transform element, instead you can create your collection of IDs with the transform.
That's amazing.
Should have had my org open. If there's time later and people's questions or whatever, I can do a quick run through on that. I'll get that open. But let's hit
let me say this back to you first. So in the world where we query a bunch of group members and there's a user ID field there, and what we were doing last time, we created a text collection variable where we get all the group members, we loop through it, and for each record we took the user ID and added it to the collection. You're telling me now that with this transform, I'll just be able to say, give me all the user IDs, put them in a collection without a looping.
Yes, it's in the pre-release orgs right now. Like I said, if we get through the questions, I'll do a quick demo of it.
Okay, I was going to say we should in the chat try to figure out what's going to be the limitation, the gotcha, because it sounds too good to be true. There's got to be some. It only works on like 10 records or something like that. That'll be the gotcha. But all right, yeah, that's a good one. All right, we have a few hands up. Ken, what do you got?
Hey, I think first of all, appreciate last week for everyone that was on the call. I know I monopolized a lot of time, so I don't want to do the same if others have things. But for those of you that do remember, I thought you might be interested to hear that ID 10T error. I'm very new to our org, so I'm like 2.5 weeks in now, and we have a tremendous amount of technical debt. So I basically, after all the troubleshooting we did, I realized, oh, wait a second, I didn't have myself on the Apex exception emails in the sandbox. I had only had it myself in production. And as soon as I did that, I saw the error, which is what we were not seeing on last week's call, which I can share with you or just tell you verbally, if I can find it, is basically a governor limit thing. So, and this kind of is, I guess, a follow-up question. Like, we don't have to dive into the whole thing last week again necessarily, but I'm still I would really love for someone to show me how you can do an update of a related set of records that triggers off of a parent object. And I mean, that can go 2-3 layers deep, right? So it's like without doing nested loops or maybe using the in operator, like people say it's possible. I can't find any examples of this, and I just haven't had time. So if that's something we could demo, maybe just like an account contact example, I would really appreciate that. And then to go back to the actual error, sorry, I was trying to find it in my email. So what happened is when we were trying to run through the method that Steve had suggested, which is don't loop on the initial object, just do a trigger. So it's a scheduled flow. So in the scheduled triggered flow, it just basically says operate on the lead object, and then we have the filter criteria there. So the issue with that is that it literally my understanding is it goes through like every single, record in your org, as long as it meets that filter criteria.
Yeah.
I also came to discover that we have a bunch of other flows doing the same thing. So we're hitting governor limits left and right. So I don't see that as scalable. And I'm trying to understand, how can that be done? Because, if you have hundreds of thousands of records or whatever, and you can't go over 250,000, even in normal, thing, if you need to run something every night, I don't see how that's possible without looping.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just to just kind of say this back to you and catch others up to speed as well. I think just to simplify things, what we were working on last week was basically a schedule triggered flow running on the lead object with some very basic criteria, right? And what would happen is when Ken was trying to debug it, it would work perfectly fine. It would find the record it needed to update it, and it would update it appropriately, no problem. But when you would schedule it to try to run, 5 minutes in the future, it wasn't working. Nothing was happening. We were basically seeing nothing that the flow was actually executing. So we went through a whole bunch of troubleshooting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just to overly simplify this, it just turns out that the flow couldn't run because there was way too many records that were meeting the entry criteria, and schedule triggered flows can't handle that volume. I think it was like a couple 100,000. You said like 750,000.
The nightmarish truth is that it's hitting like 600,000-700,000 records.
Yeah.
So, that
Now,
yes, you summarized it well, but what I want to say to that, I lost it. Sorry, I was going to
well,
add.
while you're thinking, what I was going to say is, so if you're in a situation where, it's a valid use case where you need a schedule triggered something that's going to update 800,000 rows or something like that, or process or iterate through them and figure out which ones need to be updated, and then apply some logic. Usually, and people can chime in here, but usually that's a scenario where you might want to look at something like scheduled batch apex, because scheduled batch apex, what you can do is basically there's three different methods that are in this batch apex class. You have a start method, which is basically like, here's the entry criteria, similar to what we have in the start of the flow, but it'll say, get all the records where it meets this criteria in a query. And then it'll take those records, potentially millions of records, and it batches them up, and it sends batches. I think it's like 200, 2,000. I can't remember the number, but it'll send those batches into an execute method. And that's essentially what all your logic and your flow is. And it'll go through and iterate
you
through
choose the
stuff.
batch size, Bill.
Yeah, I know there's a maximum though, and that's what I'm saying. I can't remember if the max was like 200 or 2,000.
Yeah, I think it's 2 or maybe even. Yeah, I think it's 2,000.
I remember a 2. That's all I can remember. But yeah, so it'll do that, and then in the end, there's a finish method, which after you go through all the millions of records, then you can have it do something else, like send an email or update a record or something like that. So large volumes of updates like that, almost always scheduled batch apex is the way to go, until there's some major enhancements to schedule triggered flows. I think that'd be the way.
Yeah,
Steven,
or like
Talking code. I mean, Apex. I'd have to write Apex.
Yes.
Yeah, or like the other option, which I said Ken, and I still think is the best if you want to do flow, is like we discussed last time, is you use that formula entrance criteria, and then so you need to create a formula field, and then if you can add like additional info in there, which you can't do in the start criteria, then rather than, because like at the moment, like all you've got is just status equals new lead, and for some reason you got 750,000 new leads. But if it's like new lead and record type is this and owner equals this, then if that narrows down to 12,000 leads, then now we've got like a manageable level for flow again.
And I guess all that being understood and appreciated, I guess I'd still like to see for a smaller use case how, because again, I've had this question before, and I've never been able to actually see it work, is when you do, smaller use case where it's not, when it's only going to be a couple hundred records or something, where we can do a related update. So if, in other words, I have multiple criteria where I say only accounts created in the past year, which could be, 5,000 accounts, we don't know, but only accounts created in the past year, only contacts where the brand, whatever, description equals blah, whatever, like whatever. So there's like a sub criteria. Like, I'm just trying to understand how that would look in a flow in practice. And because then you can take it to another layer, like something else related from the account to the contact to another related object. So that's like, to me, I'm thinking like 3 loops, but I want to understand how that would look in flow.
Yeah, I think let's
demo
go ahead,
if you want
Stephen. I was
to.
gonna say we could table that for now, and then if depending on the time, we can come back in, we can actually build that up.
Yeah, I'll start building it now in the background. We can look at it later.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. Thanks again, Steve.
All right, Ken, and I definitely appreciate the update, because that was definitely stumping us last week. So I'm glad that we figured out what the issue was. One thing I do want to show, though, Ken alluded to this, but just so that everybody's aware, let me
I'm
share.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just thought of what it was I wanted to mention. It wasn't shown. This is the catcher. It wasn't. It shows in scheduled jobs that it ran, but nothing shows up. And that's the reason, is because it technically ran, but then it says, like, Salesforce just says, nope, I can't run. So that's why you never see it in the debug logs.
Gotcha. Okay. Now the other thing you mentioned though here, I'm going to share, and I'm going to keep my little character on the bottom just because why not, right? The Apex exception emails. So if you go into setup and you type in Apex, you'll see this thing here for Apex exception emails. Click on that, and you can add Salesforce users or specific email addresses. And that way, when there is an exception, something does fail, you'll be sure to receive the email, and then hopefully that email will have the information that you would need to troubleshoot. And you're not just spinning your wheels like we kind of were trying to figure out, well, it's running, why isn't it doing anything? So yeah, definitely make sure you're in there if you're troubleshooting your processes and you're kind of stumped as to what's going on. All right. Any other questions on that before we move on and then potentially come back to that? Okay. All right, let's see. Before I go to Linda, I want to say hello to Anthony. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. Hey, Anthony, how's it going? All right, let's see. All right, Linda, what do you got?
Good afternoon, team. How is everyone today on this beautiful Friday? I'm calling all the way from Florida.
Nice.
Okay, so in short, I have the pleasure of working on a brand new contract with a company called Farah Gray Advisors. And I have an interesting question. I hear Ken, right? And I hear how, you're trying to come with a record triggered flow and it works in one environment, but then it's getting, like such an influx of hits. It's not even firing. So I loved all of the detail that you had. Now, this question is unique because number one, there are a lot of concepts or constructs that could be employed, but I don't have enough information from the client yet as to how he wants to handle this. And what's also unique is the client did not even know what a CRM was. I don't know if anyone has that joy of working with a client that didn't even know what one was. So I in short received, it's an interesting question because I don't really have enough information from the client. We've only had one meeting. So that's what's unique about this question that I have. But I have a lot of little details I'd like to throw at you. And then just maybe we can just chime in as seasoned consultants and just kind of open my eyes about how to approach this. So I'm going to give you the earmarks in 2 minutes of summarize everything. And then I'm going to show you the org that I built. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's what was the question or the issue that you were trying to address?
So the question specifically is this. They have information, staying high level, and then I'm going to show you the org that I built. High level, they have information. Like I said, it's very rudimentary in its incipience with not a lot of detail. Information that's being captured via Twitter and Instagram and maybe Facebook, okay, as to specific details regarding a client's profile. Okay, I'm being intentionally loose on that. And the notion is he's interested, or I suggested having a queue, right? Having it go to a queue, and then how to flesh these things out are all little conversations. Have it come into a queue, and then different agents would be obviously aligned with that queue. And then my question also is the concept of utilizing a record type, which will drive then, page layouts and pick lists. I'm saying it would only be used if it's warranted. Okay. And that's the gist is kind of how to flesh that out. And I'd like to just show you the org.
Well,
and
let me say the question back to you before you do that.
Go ahead.
Just so I fully understand.
Okay.
So you have data that's coming in from social media into Salesforce.
Yes, sir.
Through some mechanism. It's creating records in Salesforce. And is the question based on that, if it's coming from one location, you want to show a certain layout and fields, and if it's coming from a different location, you want to show a different layout and fields?
If it's coming, so that's the critical, that's you honed it right in on it exactly, and that's why I'm struggling. So basically, like, I don't know yet how he wants to set up the queues, but I would surmise that the queue is going to be set up based on the agent's focal area. So this is basically, we are handling clients that will be paired with different types of funding. So I would say, and it doesn't matter if I'm picking the right field or not, it's the concept that we're after. I would say that the funding, sir, as opposed to like whether it's coming in, from a location like Southeast, Southwest, like the funding is going to drive which agent or which advisor it's going to be assigned to.
Yeah.
Whatever type, like pre-seed funding, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And that will determine what agent it's associated with.
Is there a specific cloud of Salesforce that you're using that might have special things that we should be aware of? So in other words, like, are we talking pure Salesforce platform, or are you looking at like, I don't know, marketing cloud or
So
CPQ, or like, is there something the queuing mechanism specifically? That's what I'm wondering
yeah,
about.
so I'm thinking, like I said, like the funding, if it's pre-income, pre-seed, seed, or Series A, that will determine which agent is going to handle that. So to
Yes, I get
answer
that
your
part, but
right,
what
to
is
answer
the
your
mechanism?
question, to answer your question, he like I said, didn't even know what a CRM was. So I just picked Sales Cloud to just kind of give him a loose look at what a CRM can do. And that was my goal. And he gave me a thumbs up. So, I mean, whether, I highly doubt he's going to purchase anything. You can have an enterprise account for up to, I think, 60 days, but yeah, maybe Marketing Cloud would be better, or a different one. I'm not sure.
Okay, so taking a step back, and hopefully you can't hear my dog barking right now. So basically, you have data coming into Salesforce, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have some type of criteria set up, funding source, amount, whatever it is. And based on that, you want to assign it to a particular agent or a particular team of agents. That's essentially where you're trying to get to,
Yes,
right?
sir. Essentially
Okay.
is what I'm trying to get to. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, before I give my opinion on this, does anybody have any thoughts on the mechanism that you might use to handle this use case?
I was
Megan,
just
you
wondering.
look, Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go Steven.
I was just wondering, are you talking about, I might have missed it in the beginning because you mentioned the word funding. Is it a nonprofit organization?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nonprofits Cloud.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you said that rang all the bells, because Nonprofit Cloud has functionality built in to do exactly those things.
Oh. Okay. Can I show my screen?
You can, yes.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind though, I don't know how much experience we have with nonprofit cloud on the call, so I don't know how deep we'll be able to get into
That's
this one. But
okay.
yeah,
And I think Megan, she gave a real nice, enthusiastic smile. Yeah, I mean, it could be a slam dunk, a good mesh with that, but I'm not a nonprofit person, so I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. But here goes. Let me share here.
Well, she's pulling that up. So I'm working with an org that should have been nonprofit, but they're using PSS.
I'll have to give you the
And so
account.
all of the functionality that you have in nonprofits also exists on PSS. And so when you're talking about budgets and like moving people through things, I think it would be, if you qualify and you can get it, would be a better choice.
Yeah.
Just because it's the ERD, like that shows you like all the connectors behind it that just does this stuff for you, is much more intuitive, but it does have a higher learning curve for you.
Yeah, I see. Okay, you guys can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, let me move this over here. Okay, so basically, now I wanted to do like share my entire screen, but it only allowed me to do one page. So if I fly around this org, I'm not sure if it's going to capture that. But in essence, here's the new client, right? Company stage. And these are just pick lists, that I followed. He gave me 10 pages, literally. And I was just, I fleshed out some conceptual breakdowns of how to capture business category, right? Like how it is, funding sought. And so that, in my mind, is going to drive what queue it's going to be aligned with. But my question, to stay high level, because like I said, I haven't had meetings with him. My question really is a record type question. And that is this right here. If we have, right, if this is the new client, right, and we're capturing all this information, right, and with each new client, we're going to want to know these things right here. But then this type of funding is going to drive what queue it's going to be in. My statement is a record type is only going to be warranted if, for example, like pre-seed and pre-income really have a whole bunch of other fields associated with that record page. That's my question. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Now, keep in mind, a couple of things to keep in mind, and other folks can chime in here as well. So the question of record types, whether or not you need to use them, I feel like that's changed a little bit recently when it comes to things like dynamic forms on a Lightning page. So, for example, if the only thing you care about is that when they select pre-income, you want to make sure that a block of pre-income related fields will be displayed on the screen. And if they select pre-seed, there's another block that should be displayed. And if they select seed, both of them should be displayed. Most of the time, you can handle that visibility filters on the Lightning page itself. You don't have to worry about record types in that case. And what I can do, I can share my screen. I can kind of demonstrate how that might work if that would be helpful.
Bill, may I just synthesize what you stated? So like I've gone on to data cloud and AI and I'm just rusty, you know, with this. So it's a very rudimentary question, but should I take away that the dynamic form capability trumps, right, the notion of record type, like from a conceptual standpoint? Is that a fair take?
No, I don't think so.
No?
I would just say that in certain use cases, there's other things you might want to use record types for. It's just in this specific use case where all we're caring about is what field should be displayed on the page. I think you can simplify your life and just go with the visibility filters.
Okay, so excuse me, Bill, even if I had like 10 fields that were supposed to be displayed and I had 5 different pages, you still would give a thumbs up for the notion of using record type and just put it on the when I go into the Lightning page, put a visibility factor going, and then I would just show whatever it is.
Yes, unless there's something else that's driving you towards record types, I think the simpler option is usually the better. And again, others can chime in here, but yeah, I can definitely show you how that visibility filter would work.
Perfect.
Well, unless you had a different business process, you wouldn't want to use, you would use record type.
Yes. Again, there's other nuance. There's reasons why. Perfectly, you're right, Steve. There's other reasons, or Steve. There's other reasons why you might want to use record types. But again, if it's just fields being displayed on the screen, that's what I'm saying. Like, why even bother with record types? It's more headache than it's worth sometimes.
I got you. Now, Steve, you stated if there's other business processes. So that was what I was missing. Remember I said I think I said it's very rudimentary and I'm rusty, I might have said. But if there's business processes that are unique, right, for the pre-seed agent or the pre-income agent, then Bill, would you agree to use record types?
No, because the concept of a business process, I'm not fully familiar with. If we're talking about just like, what business process are we talking about? Like on opportunities, that kind of thing?
So let's say, for example, that the and Steve, please jump in. Let's say, for example, that the agent had to carry out different processes based on what funding the company was in, what type of funding they were in, then that would be a different business process, right?
Well,
and then you could put the record type.
Okay, no. So yeah, if we're talking about like operational stuff, like they're just going to do something different to handle that because it's one type or the other. No, I don't think that would drive you towards record types. I think, Steve, what you were more referring to is like, is there like the business process functionality around like opportunities, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like in your stage, in your path.
Yeah,
you got like
I think that's different.
Stages in your path are totally different from one process to another.
Yeah. So let me do this. I'm going to share my screen and let me just go through the visibility filter piece, and then if we need to, we can take it offline.
Well,
let me do this.
Don't mind, I just wanted to chime in to say, for the sake of everyone, I mean, Salesforce is saying don't use record types, like they're trying to get rid of them.
Really?
Like it's going to be deprecated functionality, like everything Salesforce. Don't believe what you hear because there's lots of there's lots of gaps. I mean, so that's the short answer. We have an org that has a mess of record types. Record types are an effing nightmare. Like avoid them at all costs. It's like a last
Steve, hey, Trigger Man, I'm so happy that you said that. So they're going to be, are there plans to sunset them just like workflows, or no?
I mean, I don't know officially. I've just been following, what you read on.
Yeah.
It just says like, they're moving towards like these dynamic forms, but there's still so many gaps, in my opinion, with dynamic forms. And, there's like, I think maybe to Steve's point, it's like so when he said they also tie into like business processes. So like the case object has a certain thing with like record types. It acts differently than other things. So I think sales process, support processes, these are all things in setup. that may have different use cases where you still need record types, but I could be wrong on that, but yeah.
Yeah,
I just wanna know,
I'm gonna jump into that right now, just so we can take a look at those.
Type guy. We're all ears. Okay, go ahead. Take it away, sir.
All right. So we're looking at the opportunity, for example. Right here we have just, a bunch of fields. Now let's just say that I want to display a subset of fields when the stage is one thing and a different set of fields when the stage is something else. That would be the equivalent of your funding source field that you had.
Yeah.
So if we go to edit page, on this here, I think, I already have dynamic form set up. So what I could do, I can click on fields here. I could put another section here, and I can call this stuff just for prospecting phase. All right, so I can put that section down here, and then the fields I want to display, let's just say it's going to be close date, amount, and whatever, right? It doesn't matter. But then what we could do is we can click on this component here and we can click this add filter, and I can say only display this when the stage, and I guess I did have to sing the alphabet song to get to that.
Hey, Bill, make sure she doesn't need to use this on Experience Cloud before we do this.
No, I'm not using Experience Cloud.
All right.
Here we go. All right, so equals prospecting, done. And now this section in these fields will only display when the stage is prospecting. And then you can do the same thing for the other stages. You can add another section with another set of fields. And in that case, you can say, okay, only display these when the stage is equal to something else.
Oh, that's so easy.
Now, the key, again, this is just for the use case where you want to display a set of fields based on some kind of pick list or some other kind of criteria. Now, what Ken was bringing up, and this is actually very important, is that if you go to, here, let me just leave this, I'm not going to save. But the other functionality that's kind of tied into record types that's important if you need this is if you go to opportunity, for example, I think I created some record types here. I can't remember. Yeah, I got record type 1, record type 2. When you create record types like this, if you click into the record type, you notice that one of the basic pieces of functionality that this enables now is the ability to say, okay, when there's a record of record type 1, the type field, for example, these are the pick list values that are going to be available. Right, so I can say I'm only going to display these 2 pick list values on record type 1, and on record type 2, on that type field, I want to display just 3 pick list values. Right, so that kind of functionality, like displaying some values of a pick list field versus others, or as Ken mentioned, like sales processes tied to opportunities, or there might be other things tied to other objects based on the record type. If you need to leverage those, record types might be the option, but if you don't, then just the visibility filters is usually enough to get you through 90% of the use cases. All right.
So in short, a big thank you. And I need to, I guess the advice would be, right, I need to like really drill down, figure out exactly what they're capturing and how many layers there are, right? If there's multiple layers, then it would be a record type. If it's just a visibility issue, like you said, then you can capture with dynamic forms, correct?
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, honestly. I make it up every time I say it. What is it? Dynamic fields, forms?
What is it? It's dynamic fields and a dynamic form.
You have dynamic fields on the page and dynamic forms are in your highlights panel.
Yeah, I alternate just to 50% of the time I get it right. So,
and can we actually, hey guys, can we actually catch information coming in from Twitter and Instagram with Sales Cloud? I haven't even researched that yet.
I have no idea. I don't think so. If I'm going to guess,
you might need.
No, you need marketing, marketing or data cloud.
Yeah,
an interface.
Hey, I just had 2 things before we switch gears because I think this is for everyone's benefit. I can't tell you, Linda, I think it was Linda, sorry, how many times you'll get a support ticket from Salesforce. I can't see this field. I can't see this thing and it's because it's under one record type, under a specific, and you have to dig into the profile and get down to the record type to find. And even knowing that, I forget. So it's like, yes, that's a perfect example of like functionality that you can only do with record types that like also becomes like an administrative nightmare until you have to like go digging trying to find it. Number 2 is I just literally had this happen to me in a brand, like I said, I'm new to an org with a lot of technical debt. I would highly caution you against if you're in a similar situation. I forgot. I knew this once and I forgot it. This is another huge gap with dynamic forms. Apparently, the second you add them to a page, it basically breaks the page for everything else. So if you don't, hold on, let me finish that thought. If you don't change what happened was, if we have normally the page layout is driven from the standard classic page layout editor that we all know and love. So if you add a dynamic form component to the page, so we had a user, all of a sudden they clicked a screen flow, like a button on a page, nothing popped up. The whole page disappears. Also, if you click the edit button, the entire page disappears. Apparently, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can't have dynamic forms on one section and the classic default like fields in another section. Nothing will show up. It breaks that when you do a screen flow or something.
No.
Oh, with
like
the screen
Well,
flow?
not a screen flow, but like edit page. Yeah.
as soon as
One
you
or
hit
the
the
other.
edit page, it like nothing appears, and then it breaks
Yeah.
the screen flow. So you either
Well-
convert the whole page to dynamic forms.
Don't scare
Or-
me, Ken. I'm all excited to
huge
do it.
exercise
Okay,
in thought.
so we
All right,
okay,
so-
we have a lot of new people that come into this. So let's just clear up a couple of things. So there are things that you need to keep in mind when you're changing, right? Once you're changing these pages to dynamic forms, dynamic actions, that's it. They are switched. Yes, they are coming from your page layouts. So we talk a lot about your keeping your data clean, right? If you're building new fields, you still need to be making sure that they are going onto the page layouts in the area that you would generally like to see them if you were not working from the Lightning page. Couple reasons. Number one, you're keeping your data clean. Everybody knows where it's at. Number two, you're going to have to put these on your Lightning pages in the correct order. Number three, if at any point your org scales to utilizing Experience Cloud, whatever is on that page layout is going to be shown on your pages in your Experience Cloud. You cannot support dynamic forms or dynamic actions in your Sales Cloud. If you need that type of functionality, you're going to have to write Apex, LWCs, whatever it is. Now, the good thing about dynamic actions is that you actually get to choose what your users see. So you can go in and create that. You are creating your own highlights panel. That is all editable. So if you took something off, you need to make sure you put it back on. It gives you way more customization for your users. You can also change those pages, and you can also change what's visible on that based on custom profile, not profiles, I'm sorry. Custom, gosh, Ryan, help me out, not metadata types.
Permissions.
Thank you. Custom permission, so that everybody sees exactly what they need to see. To your third point, when you were talking about everything is a mess, this is a great time to foot stomp the fact that we need to have and we need to push for good documentation as we are building, implementing, and changing things within the org. Your customer is not going to know that. So Linda, back to your point about asking all of these questions to this new person, as a consultant, it is your responsibility to make sure that they understand that building a good CRUD matrix and understanding all of these permissions is important. Profiles are not going away. That is true. Profiles are staying for a while. Salesforce is moving to permission sets. If you're utilizing permission sets, you would be able to find all of this within the permission sets and would not have as much confusion.
Yes.
My spiel is done.
Megan, you're amazing. Ken, I'm going to sign off, and a big thank you to Mr. Bell. Beautiful. I don't want to take up any more for others. It was beautiful. Loved everyone's interaction. Thank you, team.
Angry face for Steven.
I got one more thing to add. For record types, like if you're starting in a brand new org, I'd create a default record type for every object because it's so much easier to go from 1 to 2. Like
No,
than it is to go from 0 to 2.
Hell no. Why?
Why? What's the difference between 0 and 1?
Then you've got a standard record type that's like a whole other can of worms. Deleting a record type. Oh my God. When you delete,
but you don't. You just have like a default for everyone.
Yeah.
When there's one, then they don't even see it, right? It's kind of transparent to them.
Exactly. And then it's like, then if and when you do need to grow, because now if you did get to the point where you needed 2 record types a year from now, then you don't have anything pre-set up beforehand with your basic.
Steve, I take issue with on that, and I'll leave it at that. You've been a genius helping me with other stuff, but no, that I came into an org with that's just like adding in technical debt that you don't need for no reason. You don't need to add them until you need them. Removing them takes 10 times the amount of effort as adding them.
But I think what Steve, I don't want to speak for you, but what I think what you're saying is when you have 1, you never have to remove it because 1 is essentially the same as 0.
Exactly.
However, when you have 1 and you don't have what it is, because they're not going to see it, it's going to be transparent to them, but it's there. And then when you need to have 2, you're not having to create, the weird master transition to a record type and then all this stuff you have to do. Doing that when there's no data at the beginning of an org would be so much easier than having to do that after you already have thousands of records.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with both of you there. It's not the same. When you try to remove the last record type, you literally have to go into
Ken, we're not going to 0 record types.
We would never go to 0 record types. That's the point.
But why would you create one if you never need them? Like, why would you create something that
because when you do potentially need 2, 3, 5 in the future, it's so much easier to go from 1 to 2 than it is to go from 0 to 2.
How?
How? Because you've already set up all these things. You've already, like, if and when you need to take record type into
All you
account,
gotta do is
you've
data
got all your
load record
default data.
type. It's one field. You just pop in the ID. I mean,
Yeah, but then like all your sales processes and things, there's like a whole bunch of other stuff which you can like have set up beforehand, or your type pick
I'll
lists.
stop, but I disagree with, yeah, I've been in that situation, and yeah, I don't agree with creating them until you need them, but that's just me.
That could be a topic for another day. I can definitely see the benefit of doing it when it's a new org. I hate record types though. Anytime I have to implement record types after the fact, I feel like a failure. I'm like, oh,
I'm about
God.
to fight Steven on this documentation argument though. Nobody got time for
Every record
documentation.
that doesn't have a record type that's blank. So then you have to go backfill every single, maybe that's your point, like you have to backfill them all, but that's way easier than trying to like remove them after they've been added.
Now, yeah, backfilling with data loader, but then you have to take into account all your record triggered flows and triggers and all that other stuff. Again, we can shelf this one for now. We'll come back to this.
Back to documentation. Document your crap, write descriptions, write description in your flows, write description in your field. If you made a record type, make sure you document that somewhere. I don't care. If I'm coming in your org and I'm coming in behind you and I find out you didn't write descriptions, I'm coming for you.
Man, I go into my own org after myself and I'm like, why did I do this?
I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's my point. I'm like, why did I create this field? What is this for? Why did we ever need this? I actually now mark a lot of them with the user story that they were built for. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Had stepped away there.
Too busy
My
for
cat is harassing the
descriptions?
dog. Here we go.
We're kicking Steven out. Go back to Australia.
All right. Let's take a look. We have 7 minutes left. Let's jump in. Sandy, you've had your hand up for quite a while. What do you got?
Does anybody use Zapier?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I canceled it. But what do you got?
Well, we're looking at it to basically remove a more expensive third-party app, but just trying to understand functionality of it. Have any of you ever used the tables feature that it has? Because that's what I'm
I have
trying.
not. Yeah.
Not with success, no.
I'm sorry?
Not with success. I played around with it. It's it's fickle.
Sandy,
I've
can you give me
only
just
recently-
the 2-sentence overview? What is the table functionality within Zapier? And just to take it even further step back, Zapier, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is basically like an integration platform. You can have like, when this happens, do these steps. And one of the steps might be in Salesforce, one of the steps might be in Slack or some other kind of app. That's essentially what Zapier is. But what's the tables functionality?
Yeah, essentially it's a way to integrate two different programs. And so in our case, we're trying to use it with Salesforce and our accounting software. No, that's what I'm trying to understand, because I was looking at their documentation and it says to store your data, save, edit, access, and share the data you need, basically between two systems. And then it even talks about like giving view access to other users and stuff like that. So I was trying to figure out, and then I saw that you could also have, either create it like with the old, which kind of seems pointless to me, as uploading the data with the CSV, which I thought is kind of like the whole point of getting Zapier, is so you don't have to do that kind of stuff. But then it talks about doing it automatically, but I can't figure out like how it would input that data automatically, and then how other users could view it if they're not going directly into Zapier. So that's kind of what, because if I can figure that one out, I think that can also help with one of the situations we're trying to replace.
I don't think that I'm going to be a good resource on this one. Any thoughts on Zapier from anybody about handling this?
A few questions. So you're trying to connect an accounting database, or is it a spreadsheet?
It's called Xero, so it's kind of like,
Okay.
it's like a QuickBooks sort of thing. So it's it's an account online, and right now we already do have it's called Breadwinner, and so there's the integration between it, and so it kind of does that stuff for us, where we can create information from Salesforce and push it over to Xero so that it creates an invoice, and then as stuff updates in there, it will also push it back. So we're basically trying to replace that on our own.
Right. All right, now I understand. That would have been my follow-up questions. What are the directions? So because normally what you do is obviously the first direction from Salesforce to zero. That should be pretty straightforward because you have records that say, hey, I have changed, I have been created. I'm going to send that over and put it into the table row or create an invoice, and it's a table row essentially. The other way around, it's similar. It will understand that you might need to create several zaps to say, okay, something has changed as opposed to something new has been added. And then what Zapier basically does is it parses through the information once it recognizes something happened, and you have to, in your Zap, you have to map each and every field where it belongs to. Now, you will have to do a lookup as well within that Zap to find the record it belongs to. So you'll always have to pass through in both directions a unique ID that you can always refer to.
Right. But essentially what I was trying to figure out though was because it also mentions that like it can be done manually versus automatically, and I prefer the manual because what I'm trying to do is like we've got the contacts in Salesforce, you got the contacts in Xero, and while they might not always perfectly match like the information that's really relevant we want to match, but we don't want it to decide which one is the correct one. I want us to do it. So it's like that's why I was kind of like hoping that because it talks about being able to do it manually, if it's like displaying both of them, and then we can kind of go.
And that sorry, Bill, but
no,
you mean
on
on both sides or?
I mean, I don't know because like that's kind of what I'm trying to.
My
I'm
understanding
trying to what it's capable of.
My understanding from the Salesforce end would be yes, you would have to build a little bit more out because you would have to say, okay, the Zap is handing over multiple values now. I have to perhaps create a screen flow or something like that that displays this information and allows the user to interact with it perhaps with a button that says actually trigger the Zap, get back that information, and then show it. I'm not familiar with Xero that much that I wouldn't be able to tell you if you can actually do things like that on their end, but
yeah, I mean, they do have a Xero app in Zapier, so I know that they've already have that part. I'm not worried about like the connection between the two. It's just trying to understand the table concept, I guess, is really.
Is the breadwinner integration working as it should, Sandy?
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, like unless you're going to be saving tens of thousands, I wouldn't even take this project on. Like, I don't think it's worth the effort. Like, if it's already going well, because for like breadwinner, it's an entire company trying to get this integration working, and then you're trying to custom build this inside of Zapier to meet their functionality. Like, they've got
not
their
exactly.
whole.
The part of the problem is we don't necessarily need as much as it does, really.
Yeah.
And
but it's kind of like the scalability with that as well, because like you don't need it now, but if and when you do, and then you're trying to balance all this stuff like over and over with Zapier, and then you leave, and then someone else has to come in and do it. Whereas like breadwinner should always have their breadwinner experts. So like with accounting stuff, like I am more kind of yeah, I mean, but like kind of there should be support available and things like.
No, I know.
I tend to like.
I do like
that to
I do like breadwinner. I do like some of the stuff that they do. But ultimately, at this point, I personally don't have a lot of client work. So that's kind of why it's like, hey, let's just see if this is something we can do. And it's a project for me to work on at this point. So it's not like, obviously, if we get client work, that's going to take priority, but.
Yeah.
So real quick, looking at the time, we are past 1. I'm okay to go over today. I don't have a hard stop. I just wanted to make one point about the integration between external systems and Salesforce. Sometimes when I was looking at Zapier, there's a lot of functionality there where you can do lookups and you can do updates to records and things like that. What I found, and this is true even when I've done this via Apex with like web services and things like that, sometimes just getting the data from the external system and dropping it into a table with no logic required, just get whatever's in that system into a table in Salesforce, and then use all the Salesforce tools to do all the mapping and all the logic and stuff like that on your own, record triggered flows and build your screen flow to compare and find the match and make the, update the fields, like that kind of stuff. That's always an option too.
Yeah. I mean, and I've gotten some of the, like, I did my initial like trigger thing and tested that out, and it actually works. Like some of it's easier, some of it's not, but it's worked better than I thought it would for like the basic initial thing that I wanted to build. And now it's more of a, okay, now I just need to figure out what exactly we want. And then I saw the tables things and I'm like, what does it do? How does it work? Can I use this to integrate stuff?
Yeah.
Either not. So it's not like, it's kind of like at this point, I'm just trying to learn and figure out what it's capable of, because it does seem like it does a lot. And some things are some are not.
I just don't understand that as a nationally renowned Irish dancer. I just figured you'd have people that would do this stuff for you now. I don't know why you're still doing this yourself, So
Because I get bored easily. I got to keep myself busy, otherwise, idle hands.
As has been traditional with a lot of the questions you've come up, once you have a chance to go through this and figure it out, definitely report back so we can learn a little bit more about Zapier and the table functionality and things like that.
I mean, it is significantly less expensive than other things if you really just need something simple.
Yeah.
So, just one last comment on that. Does Zero allow you to like test for free, and you could just set up a test scenario with a Scratch org and see what you can do with it?
Yep, I've got a test. I'm using one of my dev orgs, and then I'm using a demo org with Zero that we have.
Oh, great.
So,
and you can build a prototype and see if functionality,
Yep.
Yeah, just one final comment on this, Sandy. When I had this use case working with Stripe, I looked at Zapier, I looked at all the different things, and ended up just building my own stuff with Apex web services and webhooks and things like that. It's just so much easier. I don't feel like dealing with these other companies and paying money to them. But in any case, yeah, let us know what you end up going to. And I think once again, at the very end of the call, Greg, we did this to you last time, maybe. You had a question, you had to wait till the very end. What do you got? Anything we can help you with on open Q&A after hours here?
Well, I've worked on various systems, and every time I start a new org or work with a different org, I always use Visual Studio Code to draw down every single metadata object. Even if you don't use Visual Studio Code for anything else, you can search for the API name of a field and find it in record types. You'll find it in reports. You'll find it in anywhere that's located, and it saves a ton of time when you're when it's a big black box and you don't know where this field is used. You can find out so much just by doing a search, and it allows for wildcards and things like that. So just if anybody has questions on it, just let me know. But it saves me tons of time when I'm doing development work, and I need to know where this field is used so that before I make a decision to do anything, I know what it's used for and where.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. Even if you're not a developer, I think just getting used to VS Code, the Salesforce connections where you can basically pull down metadata. And if you go one step beyond that and you learn Git and be able to check things into a repository, then pull down your changes, and you can start getting a history of all the changes you made. A lot of stuff you can do with VS Code. I do want to ask you though, quickly, what are you using to pull down all your metadata? Do you have a packaged XML file or something that's got like a manifest of everything that you're trying to pull down, or you put stuff in packages? Like, what is your mechanism to get everything?
Well, Visual Studio Code has several methods to do it. One's called the Cloud Explorer, and then there's a package by Salesforce. It's called a package.xml generator.
Yeah,
and
that's what we use.
There you can pull down everything, or just select items. Now you can go, let's say you just want one Apex class, you can click on Apex classes and pull down just what you want. And you can do it with the Cloud Explorer as well. All it does is when you create a project, you need to authorize an org. And so then you authorize the org just like you're logging into Salesforce. And then it remembers that setting. So then you can, anytime you're going to withdraw or extract data or push data, it'll go right to your connected org. So, and
make sure you remember to put your alias in first.
Can I offer to? I know we're over time, but if anyone wants to see it, I can show you right now what it looks like. It's beautiful. I just used it last night. It saved me like at least an hour on something that took 5 seconds of VS Code.
There you go.
See what it looks like. I could pull it up just to show you.
This is not for beginners.
Yeah, but you know it really should be, but yeah. Should I share?
It's not that.
Yeah, let's go for it.
It's if you've never it's very intimidating. I mean, I honestly question its popularity because the user interface is like what? But developers, this is like developer land. You can all see my screen.
Yep.
So yes, everything I think it was Greg just said, and I wish I knew how to get rid of this nag. It just Google Salesforce Ben or like how to install VS Code for Salesforce. It used last time I did it, it was a royal pain. This time it went smoothly. You have to literally be very careful as you're following every step as you're installing it. But once you get it set up, like he said, you're basically, this is just VS Code. It's free. You go to extensions, you go to install the Salesforce. So rather than these individual like CLIs and all this, so you need the extension pack or the expanded one, which is the one I use. Same thing with some more. It installs the Apex markup. It installs like all this other stuff. It relies on the Salesforce client. So what it's really doing behind the scenes is it's executing command line things that you would do with Salesforce CLI.
Right.
But all that aside, to your point, it's very easy. So I'll give you a perfect use case. I literally just did this last night. I had an unofficial Salesforce package installed, and for all of you familiar with that site, to change one to a new version, I had to go into every single. There was like 11 fields that needed to change the field type from text to long text. So I did that simply by, and this is another hack you can all steal from me. Yes, there's a package generator to generate the files. I kind of built my own template from experience, and I just uncomment whatever I need so that I have it at my disposal when I need it. And then I just literally right click and do retrieve source from org from manifest. That's one thing. So that'll get down anything in the package that's not commented. So in this case, I uncommented flow table view definition, which is really just a custom object. And I was able to update every single field, and I could have even done this better with search and replace, but here's all 10 fields on that object. I had to change the length of the field, and I had to change it from text area, or I think text to text area long, and visible lines to 5. So literally you can even do a search and replace in here and just do like all these like this. So you can imagine how much of a time saver this is versus like trying to do this in the UI. And like you literally just go back to your package, right click, deploy to org.
Now,
just gonna I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade. We do use this. It is awesome. Once you start using this, you can't use change sets. You need to have somebody who knows how to work it, because then you're going to have merge conflicts. So if you switch to this, just keep in mind that whoever your release manager is who's going to be running this, if somebody builds in an environment they're not supposed to be building in, or if you have multiple people working on multiple branches, you have to merge your branches before you move up, and any changes that are up there, everything has to match. So if somebody, like the release manager is gone for a week and the person backfilling doesn't know how to use VS Code, and they say, I'm just going to do this week and change sets, the person who's actually in charge is going to have to come back, and they're going to have to do a lot of work to make all of your branches match again. So you don't get the merge conflicts, you don't have to get the read errors or anything like that. So yes, we use it all the time. It's awesome, but everybody has to be on board when you're using it.
Well, yes, keep in mind too, whether you're using VS Code to deploy those changes or you're making the changes manually within your work, it still comes down to, if you have a bunch of people with their hands in the cookie jar, there's somebody managing that and managing changes. I don't think it changes just because you're using VS Code.
The difference is, Bill, if somebody moved up a change set from an org moving it up, it's not going to ruin every other branch.
Right. So I think like Greg mentioned earlier, that's where you get to the next level of VS Code, which I haven't even gotten to, is where you integrate Git with VS Code. So then it's safe, right? Then you have your Git or whatever you're using, GitHub or the other ones, right? So then you integrate that with VS Code, and then you can commit your changes. That's what developers are doing, right? They're committing it all from VS Code. Thank you for pointing that out, because that's kind of the sole admin mindset, what I was showing you. But yes, like anything else, if there's multiple hands in the cookie jar, you gotta do your.
But for the entry level developers or anybody curious, just having that search capability through the metadata,
It's really nice.
if that's all you do, it's not that complicated, and we can do a quick demo next meeting or whatever on how to do that.
Yeah,
And
let me Greg, that's a great point. Can I show that one piece that you mentioned that I don't think that
sure.
we saw? So for anybody, again, for entry level within VS Code, you should be able to see my VS Code screen now, right? There's this icon that you'll notice, mine's on the right side, but you see it's a org browser. So when you authorize your org and you want to pull down all your Apex classes or all of your permission sets, whatever it is, you can do them one at a time. You can go like expand this and then you can download them, or you just hit that for the entire level. You can just hit this download and it'll pull all that metadata down into your VS Code. So to Greg's point, if you go through that, you download all the key pieces of metadata that you care about using org browser, using just that little retrieve source button there. Eventually, what you can do then is you come into the search, you look for the word describe, and now it's going to show you every single place, every file that contains that word. So if that was a field API name, find all your permission sets, all your flows, everything that contains that API name. So yeah, definitely a very cool piece of functionality, even for somebody that's just an quote unquote just an admin. You can get a lot of benefit out of it, even if you don't care about development stuff.
Right,
So,
for updating flows, you can search and replace, just literally search and replace and upload the flow back. And that doesn't really impact anyone because it's the same as if you just push a change set, assuming you're following your company's protocol, right?
yeah, I think there's all those DevOps nuance that we'd have to factor in as Megan was mentioning. But otherwise, yeah, VS Code, doing it manually, change sets. It's just another great tool to have in your tool belt.
By the way, one last thing I meant to mention. I have two VS Codes up. So I have on my monitor, I have my production, and there's a Peacock extension. So it turns it blue,
Yes.
and on my other screen, I always have my UAT or my sandbox. I turn red or whatever your color. So I have them both up, and I can literally not be worried about them. I don't have to constantly switch the orgs back and forth and reauthorize them. You can have multiple instances of it running.
So here you go. So when I hover my mouse over my VS Code, I don't know if you can see this, but you'll notice I have a red one. That's one project to work in. I have blue and I have yellow. So I always know based on the color which thing that I'm working in, so I don't get confused and start blowing away things in my managed package versus some other side project I'm working on. But yeah, Peacock extension, and just in general, just final note, and I think we might have to part ways here, but extensions within VS Code are amazing. There's anything you can imagine that you'd want to do in with text manipulation, find replaces, coming up with snippets where you don't have to repeat doing things. There's probably a widget out there or an extension that somebody created for it. So Peacock just being one of them where you can say, for this Salesforce project, I want it to be this color. That's a great example, but there's tons that are out there. Yeah, any other thoughts or questions for today before we part ways? I know we're way over, but it's a Friday.
Yeah. So you want me to hold the transform IDs thing till another time?
Yeah, you want to make that our we'll kick that off for next week. That'll
sure.
be
I hate to do it over questions anyone might have, but yeah.
I mean, if you have it teed up, if you have it teed up and you spent the time, you want to.
It's teed up.
Yeah, you do it now.
Yeah, I'm here, but I know not everyone might be. Yeah, let's do it. Let's.
We record these calls for quality assurance, so.
All right, so that should be visible now. Let's move the meeting.
Sorry, what was the use case here? What are you trying to do?
Instead of having to loop through a collection of records to get a collection of IDs to then use in the in operator in your next get, you can just do it with the transform starting next release.
Is this what I was about, or is this?
Yeah, so I got the old version up as well, Ryan. Maybe if you want me, I'll just show you like how it currently looks versus why yours is so much neater.
Yeah, show it real quick. I had a version that had all this, but it's not. I don't have that right now. So yeah.
Okay, I think you just need to stop.
Oh, thank you.
Do I have to?
But just to be clear, those were in response to my what I was.
Yeah, they came up as part of your thing. Yeah, where you're creating like sub records and things like that. Yeah.
I think even before that, actually. But
yeah, so I basically just set up little screen flow where you can search for accounts like by their name, and then show you, and then like what you currently have to do is you have to loop through, so like all the accounts that are found, and then you add the account ID. So this is a text collection of account IDs, and then the looping through, add the ID to it, and then based on that.
The original get? What's the trigger on this?
So I'm just doing a screen flow.
Screen flow. Okay, so you're starting.
The trigger doesn't necessarily matter in this case. It's
No,
just,
it's a screen
you get a
flow.
parent
Okay.
record.
So I'm just
and we
saying
need to
like
get
the
the
name
child
starts
records.
with whatever you type in here.
Name starts with is your entry criteria, if you will.
Yeah, and then the get contacts is then based on the account ID of the contact is in my text collection of account IDs. And then, so this is where you're saying, if you wanted that other condition and, and first name equals Bob, like you could have that in here as well if you want.
Okay.
Drill down. So that's the old way
again,
of doing
like if you, yeah. So that's the old way. And then again, you can like add all those contacts to a different collection. If then you wanted to say, then task, which are looking up to this contact. You could keep going down and down and down, like as much as you want, but it's like looping through to add to collection.
Zoom out a little bit just so I can see the whole flow at once, kind of macro. Okay, so get the contacts, get the accounts, loop through the accounts, do your filter there as you're adding them to the text collection. Can you open that one, the assignment, the first one?
This one?
The one you set up? Yeah.
Yeah.
Add them, right, to current account IDs to current loop. Okay, right. And then go back to the flow.
Yeah,
and then keep zooming out. And then get the contacts. And open up that one. That's just contacts?
You can read it in the yellow box.
Right?
It's got all the information.
Oh, it's got, I don't know what that hover is you have there. That's nice. Account, okay. And then loop through those contacts, add contacts to text collection. I think I got that, but just double click on there if you would. Same thing, contact ID, add to that collection. Okay. And then update the contact. Okay, you could iteratively keep going through this.
Yeah. So then like if there's something which is looking up the contact, like a task record, then you can say, now get me all tasks where the contact IDs are in this collection. And then you could just
thank you for that. And then Ryan, you had another approach.
Yeah, this will be available in the next release. It's using the transform object, which currently in the current release, you got to transform to a whole record or Apex record.
But, so this is API 62, to be clear. We're on winter 25 now, we're talking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So for that one, you'll be able to do the same thing, get your collection of accounts. And here, we'll just run through a debug of it and show you what it'll do. It gets for this right now it's just grabbing all the accounts.
That's
13. And then this component's a little trippy in the debug, but then next we got all the opportunities for those accounts. So these 31 opportunities. So let's look at that in the, can anyone move this thing? Yeah, it moves, cool. All right. So what we did was the same thing, but instead of a loop.
Sorry, wait, can we just start
did a transform?
Look at this guy.
Starting with get accounts. Can I just see the actual get accounts? I mean, I assume it's straightforward, but get accounts is getting just all.
I got all my accounts. Okay. But we could conditionally get just the ones that say the name starts with United.
Sure.
So I'll just make this update real quick. But so we're going to get like 3 accounts now, and then we're going to get considerably less opportunities doing it this way. So we'll get our accounts, then showing them to you here was that you saw the 2 screens. I was just showing you the accounts we got. And then all you do is you use the transform, which in the current version, we could show you doing a new transform. Like this is what I'll do, like we were going to do it to the opportunities real quick. In the current version of a transform, give it a name. You pick your source data, the collection that you're going to go through. So this would be, say, the opportunities from the get opportunities. And then you pick your target. And in the current, when you go to select resource, you only have record and Apex defined. And you can go do this in your own orgs right now. In the new version, we're getting all the primitive variables as well. So what I can do is say what I want to create is a text collection by hitting the allow multiple. And then you map, like you tell it create, it creates this variable, which is a text collection, and then you map, say, the ID field. Done. I did everything that was done in the loop and the assignment and everything else.
So, Ryan, let me ask you a question on this. So that makes sense. That's an exact going from the looping to get a collection of IDs to just using the transform. How good is this transform? Like, if I wanted to get a list of unique values in a text field that are in that collection, I could. Is there a way to map it, but then just have like a unique operator on it, where it's not going to create a collection of 84 of the, with 3 different values, 84 times, but can it just give me 3 values at the end?
So right now it doesn't filter out it, so it operates on every one. So it's when you're doing something similar to the loop that Steven showed you, where you're going to operate on every single one you got and then add them to a collection. That's when you'll use transform. When you're wanting to do things like put a decision in a loop and maybe act and maybe not.
Yeah,
I've come up with some ways you could use transform, but it's just not really ready yet. You could get the whole transform and then filter out the ones you don't want. Would be an equivalent.
Yeah, so as I'm kind of thinking about how this kind of relates to some of the gaps that Flow's had with Apex, this is still very much in the list world, where you might have the same value in there 15 different times. So there's no way to like turn this into like a set where it's just giving you unique values on the right side.
No, but even if you did, for this situation that I'm particularly saying this is a good use case for, which is for the get values in, it doesn't matter if close out of this thing that we were playing with. But if I'm just trying to get the values in and the ID appears 17 times, it doesn't matter. It's just only get opportunities where that ID exists in this collection. It can exist 20, 30 times in that collection. It doesn't matter. So it'll still work for this use case.
I wonder if it could matter though, just based on the volume. Is there any kind of limit for the number of records in that? Like, I'm assuming under the scene, like behind the scenes, they're turning that into like a SOQL statement of some kind where they're
It is. So you 50,000 is your limit.
Okay.
So you weren't going to get 50,000 from your first get. You weren't going to get more than 50,000 from your first get.
So it's the same
to be a problem in your second get. Yeah. So that's why you shouldn't do what I did here in my demo org that first time where I just got all accounts. It's obviously in a real world, because you want to make sure you don't exceed the 50,000.
Yeah.
If you get 50,001, then it breaks. So you definitely would want to filter down. So here we as we did it with the name, so you can see that the filter is actually working. And let's see, if we do it in debug mode, you'll see the actual as it goes. It got the accounts that started with United. I'm sorry, what's that, Ken?
To do the screen flow, because this is really nice. Is this just native data table, or are you using the unofficial Salesforce one to pop this up?
This is the native data table, not the way cooler unofficial Salesforce one.
Okay.
In my preview org, I try to only keep standard Salesforce components so that I can make sure that I'm really testing new functionality of new core functionality of Salesforce. It's just how I operate. But you see, we got 31 when we got them all before. Now we only got the ones for the account. So you can see that it is working, and you can see it's essentially building this collection. It got all these records. It went through them all. So you'll see this will look just like I think it would look in your almost pretty similar to what it would look like in Steven's flow, where it goes through, but instead of seeing a new iteration, you just see.
Are you
using them together?
A formula field for the account name column? Yeah.
I did, because that is a drawback of this data table.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
I did the same thing in the data table.
So does it have a field on the object or in the flow?
So to display an opportunities account name using this particular data table screen component,
like any lookup field would just show the ID.
Yeah, it just shows the ID. Whereas in the unofficial SF component, I'm pretty sure it'll show the name if you want. But in this component, so yeah, I did. I created a formula field real quick so I could show you the name for this purpose of this demo.
Yeah.
And going back to something we mentioned within like the first 10 minutes, this is one of those features where you're like, come on.
Yeah, right. And then because it's like, then people like create just the text field, and it's like, oh, actually, you want it clickable, then you got to go back and make it a hyperlink formula as well, and so that you can get around everything. But it's like, oh, it should just already be a clickable.
The unofficial SF one, that same field would have showed the name. And then it originally, the very first versions of it that I ever played with, it was always a clickable link.
Yeah.
And we didn't always want it to be, so they put an update, and now you can actually decide in the unofficial SF form whether the link's clickable or not. So they do a lot faster, more often updating over there on the unofficial.
The amount of times I like fat fingered on my mobile.
Save me a few hours. Can you just show me the screen flow that pulls this up? I just want to take a screenshot of that if you don't mind. The show account screen. That's really a time saver. Either one of those. The blue. The show.
You just want to. There's nothing on here but a data table.
This simple, like it's literally just like. Okay.
Yeah, well, if you
use the data table component, you have to configure it. So it's right here, data table. You got to pull it in, and then you do have to configure it. You have to pick a collection that you're gonna, and then you have to configure rows to see whether it's going to be a view only, which is what I used for this, single selection or multiple selection, because you can actually select these records and do stuff with them. I didn't in this; they were just a visual. So I used view only. Then you have to configure columns. You have to literally say, I want to add this name field. I want to add this account ID field, and you can rename the label instead of using ID. You could put a label you wanted in here. And this is just a standard component.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. It's just not enough time in the day. I mean, to get the data table, I've been trying to build something like this. So I appreciate it.
Ryan, make your investment decisions based on current available functionality of Salesforce, but I don't know why Salesforce just doesn't take everything from unofficial SF and just incorporate it into their core product, kind of like an own company thing.
They do slowly, because several of the people who develop components on unofficial SF do work at Salesforce, some of them in the flow department. And you'll notice that they'll show up as Salesforce labs, and then eventually they'll make their way into Salesforce core, some items, not all of them, but I mean, some of them show up as Salesforce labs.
Alex and Erica, those guys down there are just like beta testers for them. Like, seriously, it's like, I mean, it's amazing that I'm sure it's just red tape. I don't want to work at the sausage factory. You will never catch me ever. I don't want to know what goes on. Why? I can only imagine, 25 years on ID Exchange to add something. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this thing is one of my favorite new tools. So there's definitely things to play with in here.
So this is interesting to me that it's a transform, and I've not touched the transform. I was aware of it. Again, another like kind of advanced flow feature, because that's kind of like weird to me. Like, I mean, you're basically saying that's like a data operation. You're doing a transform, which is like, okay. I mean, I because my head around that, because it's like, why is it a transform?
Well, it goes a lot deeper. Say we wanted to take those accounts, and we get all these accounts, and this is you can currently do in your orgs today if you want to go play with it. And then say you create a record collection of contacts. You wanted to create new contacts for every account. You could this is a more, I mean, would you argue that this is potentially an elegant, brilliant solution, but also kind of a hack, because there's not another way to do it in flow, if you will? It seems like there's definitely ways to do this in flow. You just did it with loops in the past.
Example, I mean, other than the loop.
No, we've been using loops for years. So,
okay.
But now I don't need a loop. I can just create a contact for each account. I can give it a name. I can name it after. I can do some sort of a transform on the account name. Say.
Right, because technically, when I think of a transform, I'm talking about changing data.
There is a transform you can do. So I can. Oh, I want to let me map the name field. Name fields aren't available for transformation, but you could use formulas and transform and do stuff on the way there. It's a lot like if you're using Data Cloud or Einstein or CRM Analytics.
Brian, let me ask you a question. So this mechanism that you're showing right here, where you're creating a contact for every account or something like that, in theory, this would be a great way to clone records as well, right?
It would be a great way to clone them, except that you have to literally map each one over to do it when you do the
a small amount of fields. I can see that, and if you could if you can update one of those fields to be something different than the original. In other words, like
Yes,
if there's
and you
5 records
can.
here and 5 records here, I want to move the parent over.
No, I think I know a hack for that. Are you asking about just cloning a record with all,
No,
not
I'm
related?
asking just specifically about the transform element to see if it can do that automatically versus all the other headache that we would have to go through to do it manually in the
Well, that's what I
past.
was asking. When you say headache, the hack is you put in a subflow, it clones everything on the record.
Yeah, but I'm asking about transform. Yeah, I know we could do it in other mechanisms through
Okay.
flow or through subflows or through Apex or all the other things that we could do. But transform, if it's like a single element and I can clone a list of 10 records from one record to another, that'd be pretty slick.
Yeah, you can. And this is not a preview org, so I think I already have something put together. I know we're in overtime. If anybody, I don't think there's a whole lot of us left, but so this was showing. Oh, that's the wrong version. This is an original. Oh no, this was 2 versions: aggregate demo, old school loop. These are other versions of other things you can do with the transform. So never mind. This isn't ready for prime time like the other one was. But
that's still pretty slick though.
Thanks again. Did you share your LinkedIn? Would you mind? Or
I'm the only Ryan Fondulus on LinkedIn.
Or I guess put another way, is it okay if I find you somehow? Reach out if I need to?
Sure.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful. Thank you. Well, you and Steve, again, Bill, lifesavers here for me. I mean, this is like 10 years of experience just on this call to me.
Like, I'm trying to think of what where's an easy transform to do? Is there billing, something that's on both? Because I didn't, well, you know what? Yeah, more to Bill's point. Let's make a new account. Record account. That way it's an easy transform. So if you were going to clone your accounts, you could clone this entire group of accounts and say for account number, you can come in here and you can use a formula.
Okay, so that's the piece I was missing right there.
And that's
so
the transform.
Okay.
So you could take whatever the old account number was and I don't know.
Well, so in the use case of like cloning,
because account number is actually text, right?
So let me ask you this, Ryan. So if in the use case where you had an account that had 4 contacts, this is a horrible use case. Just bear with me. An account with 4 contacts, and the account was like site number 1, and then there's another account that you had called site 2, and you wanted for whatever reason to clone those contacts from account 1 to account 2. In theory, you could map the account ID field, put a transform on it, and just say like the formula is like destination account. Like basically you had
that is a horrible, but yeah, except I don't know if you can transform on that field. Let's take a look, because I saw there were some fields that it wouldn't let me transform on, and
yeah,
I think
the ID would be the key.
One.
Can you do, or maybe not ID, but maybe like account ID or some other kind of lookup field, I think would be the one you'd want to transform on.
Oh wait, here you go. Yeah. So what you could do in here is cheat it. Now, what happens is this plus this. So that's what I was trying to find in my other work. I found a way to kind of cheat your transforms here, especially if you want to do it to all of them. Oh, I didn't mean to close that. And that is add another source item. And for that source item, make it be an empty variable. So you need to, this is getting a little more advanced to some things that I've played with here in the transform as I've been exploring it. These are the hacky things you have to do kind of. So you can just make this empty variable for transform and then literally set it to the empty string. Now, because that exists in my org, I can go here, add this as another source item, and then I can map it to whatever field I want to map to here.
And that would just blank it out? Is that what it would do?
Deselect it. Well, no, if you say you wanted to map from here, but you want to completely not bring over the old billing address, or let's find one, not bring over the old billing city, but you wanted to bring over a new billing city.
Yeah.
This is how you introduce your new billing city. let me delete that map. How do you delete a map? Have I never
Wait, dumb
deleted a
question.
map?
If it's highlighted, you can't just hit the delete key.
I thought I did hit the delete key, and it didn't delete. Oh, there it is.
There you go.
There's a
Where's
delete.
the Mac? There is
So say I want to go from here to
Hold on. I thought
let me
keep
find a
going, but I got a
number.
question real quick before you're done.
Here to, I guess I need a text field. Give me a fine shipping. Well, give me a damn text field I can map to. Ticker symbol. Okay. So mapping right now it's empty, but then I would use this to put whatever normal formula I wanted to put. If I wanted to put a formula in here to operate on other values and do things, it doesn't let me pull it. If I pulled it over from an existing field, I'm stuck with whatever that existing field is, and then I can go plus whatever else. But now I've got a nice blank canvas. So I do this plus whatever else, and I can set them all to a name or to whatever I want. And it could just be one name or one thing, or I could do a formula that's going to start acting on other fields. You can grab other fields from within the transform in here.
Yeah, that's pretty slick.
Yeah, it gets crazy. I haven't. I'm still playing with this stuff, but I did find that if you want to introduce another way to get in there, but you don't want to use the existing field, especially if you want to put it on all the records, you just make yourself a variable with an empty string, and then you can do whatever you want. There's a lot to play with here.
Transforms can't do aggregates yet, right?
Yes, they can. And the current version that's out there can do aggregates.
Yeah, I've played with it.
So if you go to this transform, we get back to add transform. Navigating around them takes a minute. So I think we got to delete and start over here. But if you wanted to aggregate, you get that same thing. Say there's my accounts from get accounts, and you use this top one right here. That's the whole collection.
And just add that to a variable.
Yeah. So right now, if you want to use it today, you need to make a record variable and then pick a field, and then pick a number field and then aggregate to that number field. That's how I do it. But now that this is out there, you can just do a number. Come there, you'll be able to just do it straight to a number, but you got to kind of cheat it. You make a record, pick a number field, and aggregate to it right now, today. But
and then you can reference that field later on.
In the future, you do this. We're going to aggregate. So if you do it from there, now it pops up the aggregate window, so you can count or sum. And what's cool is you can count, say, all the records, like instead of doing the whole equals count of whatever. But the sum is very cool because you pick the field that you want to sum. So I can sum my annual revenue from all these accounts. And that's done. I now have the annual revenue from that collection of accounts, and I can use that
having to loop through and do some weird addition and all that junky stuff.
Exactly. So yeah, the aggregate is pretty cool, and that exists today. The problem with today is that, again, you have to do something funky today. So your only options are Apex defined and record. So you would say pick a record and maybe pick an account. So what it does is it creates this account record to use here. So then you just find some number field, maybe number of employees, and then you do the same thing. This is if you just have to use this today. It's a little hacky. And now you just do your aggregating there, and you can sum your, again, let's say our annual revenue. And now to access it, I access the account record that was created here and access that one field, the number of employees field. And it's really the aggregate of my other accounts. It's just a hacky way to use it today without having to wait until the primitive variables are available to you.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
I wonder in this new iteration, if this will simplify using flows to do like basic roll-up calculations. I know like a lot of people if they're not using DLRS or roll-up helper, they can't use a roll-up summary field. They have to, that use case where when something changes, they got to like query all the records, loop through them, and put an aggregate on some record. This seems like this would make that a
It
thousand
will,
times easier.
and today you can use the cheater method where I just did. So I just summed the one field. Now I want to sum. Well, these don't sum. There's nothing to sum. Okay, now I want to sum number of employees, which I should have used the number of employees field for that. So right now I'm summing my number of employees to the number of locations field and my revenue to the number of employees field. I could use them in my roll up. It's silly, but yeah, I don't think you can do this to the primitives. You know how I just sum to different fields. I think, let's find out. I think with the primitives, I might have to make a new transform. So you may still want to use the thing I'm calling hacky. Create.
I'm trying the hacky version right now, just see if I can do that roll up.
You could still hit governor limit, right? Because there's nothing batching this. Like if it's like unlike an Apex or DLRS, which it really batches behind the scenes.
There's no this might as well be a filter or a loop or a collection sort. We're not hitting the server. No limits are being messed with in the transform.
It's not, the transform's not a DML operation, right?
Right.
Okay.
I don't think I can do multiple. Yeah, see, it doesn't let me pick another target. So if you wanted to sum multiple things to do your roll up, you'd want to use a record or maybe even Apex defined record. And we tested out that it also works with the custom metadata type. That counts as a record. So you could create a custom metadata type or an Apex defined, or you could hackily use account with repurposing of the fields to build your nice custom roll up and do it within one transform.
Yeah, I guess and what I'm seeing here is that in the roll up use case, if you're trying to roll up to a field, you just use that field, use that object you're trying to roll up to, and just use the field that you're trying to put it in. So
yeah, perfect. That'd be perfect. So that's not even hacky. That's just perfect.
That's slick. Okay, yeah, I definitely need to get smarter on the transform element. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you can do that today, Bill. So without a preview work. So
the only thing you don't have is update at the end. So this, you're just updating that target object, right? Whatever you.
So you've created this object in the this record in the transform. Or in this case, I've created a variable, a number variable, or you've created a record, or you create whatever, and then you act on it. You do your DML or whatever to it.
Yeah, so you still have to put an update in there.
So
assignment.
No,
you're replacing the loops and the filtering and that kind of stuff. You're not replacing your pink objects.
So are you updating a collection then, or you're still updating a collection, right?
In this case, it's just a variable, right?
Yeah, it just depends what you built. Like in this case, I have a number. I can use this number wherever I want in the rest of the flow. Or I could make a collection and then I go and I just do an update, and in the update, I tell it, I just tell it to use that collection. Right now I didn't make a collection in my transform, but it would show up here if I did make a collection of records, and I would just use it and do the update records.
Yeah, I guess, even I'm a little advanced for me here. I'm transform element, but like I'm trying to follow where that's actually saving. It's wherever you define that record variables, for example.
The record variable is, well, I don't have one creating a record, so that's why you're not seeing a record variable. But if you created a target, which was say a record variable of account, and then you were mapping account numbers, which you'd probably want to do a transform on that, right? Because otherwise you're going to have the same account number, and that's going to be crazy. And then you map the rest of your fields, and you're done here in your transform. So now, when I go down to my update records, that transform object is right there, that collection that I just created. It's named put account IDs in collection because that's the name of the transform, but it'll be the name of the transform. In the end, the transform creates that record or variable.
Right. Yeah.
That you can then just use like any other record or variable or collection of records. And so you would just boom, and then that would do an update records on. If there were records to update. In this case, it's a new record, I guess. So you do a create, but you just use it like you would any other collection.
Oh yeah, you'd probably still have to throw in some null checks here, or no.
You don't have to do null checks unless it's before a delete. If there's nothing that meets the criteria, it's cool. It doesn't fail unless it's
right.
I
mean, potentially any of
deletes fail.
Yeah, but any of the gets could return null, right? If you assuming you have some filter criteria.
Yeah, if the gets return null, then there's nothing to transform, and you'll just have an empty collection. So it's.
You're saying it wouldn't
unless you're doing a delete. Yes, it's good practice to check that you're getting what you're looking for, but you don't technically have to, is all I'm saying.
All right, friends, I don't need to cut this short, but I do need my Zoom account back. All right, Brian, I definitely appreciate you going through that. I definitely think we could spend a whole session just on that transform element itself. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the extra time. What did we go 47 minutes over today?
Thanks again, guys.
Yeah. All right, guys, enjoy your weekend, and we'll catch up next week then.
Yeah.
See y'all.